The planet Varela Ix looked like paradise from space. From orbit, it was a shining green jewel, wrapped in swirling white clouds. Oceans sparkled in sunlight, and vast continents were covered in thick, endless rainforest. To the eyes of anyone who had never been there, it was beautiful, calm, peaceful, full of life. But to those who had set foot on its surface, it was a place of nightmares. The jungle here was alive in a way that defied reason. The air was thick and heavy, like breathing warm water. The ground was soft with rotting leaves, and every step released the smell of decay. The plants were bright and colorful, but their beauty hid the danger thorns that dripped poison. Vines that moved when no wind blew. Flowers that lured prey with sweet scents before snapping shut. The trees grew so tall, they blocked most of the sunlight, turning the forest floor into a place of shadows. Somewhere in those shadows, things watched. They didn't just watch, they waited. The Alliance had sent 6 expeditions to Varela Ix over the years. None had returned. The last team, an insectoid species called the Kryn, had been strong, fast, and well prepared. They wore full body armor and carried high-energy rifles. Their last transmission, sent in a chittering panic, had been only 3 words: the Roots hunt. After that, silence. Not a trace of them was ever found. Now, the Alliance needed something buried deep within the planet's crust, a rare mineral called Ixionite. This crystal could stabilize quantum drives, allowing fleets to travel across the galaxy without catastrophic malfunctions. Without it, the ongoing war with the Korth Dominion would tip toward defeat. The mineral was the key to survival for dozens of civilizations. The Council of Species gathered in the Great Chamber of Arvines Prime to decide what to do. Delegates from across the galaxy spoke in low, grim voices. Some argued to abandon Varela Ix completely, calling it cursed. Others demanded a new expedition, no matter the cost. But when it came time to ask for volunteers, the list was shockingly short. Only one name appeared: Terrans Survey Division, Captain Mason Hale. A wave of surprise swept through the chamber. The humans hissed. The Veltron ambassador, a tall reptilian with shimmering scales. They are not ready for this world. They will not last 2 days. High Chancellor Zither, a glowing crystalline being, leaned forward. Captain Hale, are you certain you understand the risks? Mason Hale stood in the center of the chamber, calm and steady. He was a tall man with sun-browned skin, close-cut hair, and sharp eyes that seemed to weigh every word before speaking. I understand the risks, he said. We will last as long as we need to. The murmurs turned to soft laughter from some of the more arrogant species. The last expedition had gone in with towering mech suits, energy shields, and squads of heavy assault troops. If they had failed, how could a small group of humans possibly survive? Hale didn't bother to explain. Instead, he requested only a few things from the Alliance: a week's supply of food rations, lightweight recon armor, survival kits, and atmospheric rebreathers. No mech suits, no heavy artillery, no domes or shield generators. The day of the mission came. The Terran ship, Odyssey, descended through the planet's thick, stormy clouds. Lightning flickered across the sky, illuminating the endless green below. In the cargo bay, 5 humans prepared in silence: Lieutenant Sarah Knox, the medic; Sergeant Daniel Rourke, the tracker; Corporal Elias Voss, the engineer; Specialist Mira Chen, the scout; and Captain Mason Hale himself. They carried no massive weapons. Instead, their gear looked shockingly primitive compared to Alliance standards: machetes, rope, climbing hooks, compact crossbows, water filters, and small drones for mapping. To the alien observers watching through remote feeds, it looked like suicide. The Odyssey touched down in a small clearing carved out of the forest by orbital scans. Steam hissed as the landing struts sank slightly into the damp soil. The ship's ramp lowered, and the team stepped out. The air hit them like a wall, hot, wet and heavy. Insects the size of a person's hand buzzed overhead. The jungle smelled of earth, rain, and something faintly metallic. The canopy swayed, even though there was no wind. Sarah Knox adjusted her breathing mask. Feels like the air's trying to crawl into my lungs. Rourke grinned. Better than crawling into your skin. They moved in a tight formation, vanishing into the green shadows. The sound of the Odyssey's engines faded, replaced by the soft, constant hum of life all around them. Somewhere in the distance, something screamed, high-pitched and sharp, and then the forest went silent for several long seconds. Watching from orbit, the Veltron ambassador shook his head. Fools, he muttered. They are walking into the mouth of a beast. But Hale's team didn't seem afraid. They moved with a quiet confidence, marking trees with small cuts so they could find their way back. Mira Chen scanned the area with a handheld device. Ground's unstable in patches. Watch your step. The first strange movement came less than an hour in. A root as thick as a man's arm shifted under the soil and curled toward Rourke's boot. Without hesitation, Hale swung his machete down, severing it cleanly. The root twitched, then recoiled into the ground. That was alive, Voss said quietly. Everything here's alive, Hale replied, and everything here's hungry. They pressed on, back aboard the Odyssey. The alien liaison assigned to observe humans asked a quiet question to his superior. Why are they smiling? Because they were. Even as the shadows deepened, and the forest seemed to lean in around them. The Terrans smiled like people who had been here before, in spirit if not in place. They knew this kind of fight, one where the land itself was the enemy. Mason Hale glanced up at the towering canopy, his eyes narrowing. The jungle seemed to breathe in and out, like a living thing waiting to test them. Under his breath, he whispered to himself, "Let's see if you can kill us too." The sun on Varela 9 never truly set. It only faded into a deep green gloom as the dense canopy swallowed the last traces of daylight. By the time Mason Hale's team reached a small ridge above a stream, the jungle felt heavier, quieter, as if it were holding its breath. They had walked for hours. The air clung to their skin, damp and warm. Every movement seemed to make the forest shiver, leaves rustling, roots shifting, unseen eyes following. Somewhere in the darkness, drops of water fell like slow, deliberate footsteps. "Camp here," Hale said, scanning the area. "High ground, water source. 2 exits." The team moved quickly, but quietly. Rourke cleared a small circle of undergrowth with his machete. Voss unpacked a lightweight tarp and strung it between 2 massive roots that twisted up like pillars. Knox and Chen set out motion detectors and heat beacons, planting them in the soil at the camp's edge. From orbit, alien observers watched through tiny drones. Most couldn't believe what they were seeing. No armored bunkers, no energy shields, no fortress walls. The humans' camp was open, vulnerable. To them, it looked like suicide, but to the Terrans, it was bait. As the light faded, the sounds of the jungle changed. The deck reachers fell silent. New noises replaced them, slow wet slithers, distant clicking, and an occasional low, vibrating hum that made the air tremble. Sarah Knox sat by the stream, filling their water filters. She glanced at Hale. "You've been quiet." Hale knelt, examining the muddy bank. "Tracks," he said. "Something big passed here recently." Chen moved closer, scanning with her device. Body heat residue, humanoid shape, but wrong proportions. Long arms, no visible eyes. Voss frowned. "Could be one of the things that killed the other teams." "Could be," Hale replied, standing. "So we don't wait for it to find us." Night fell completely. The only light came from the faint glow of bioluminescent plants, pale blue fungi on the tree trunks, and tiny sparks that floated in the air like fireflies. The humans' camp was dim, blending into the no bright lights to draw attention, no noise, except the whisper of the stream. They ate in silence, ration bars, and filtered water. The air smelled faintly sweet, almost pleasant, but it carried something underneath. A scent that made the hair on the back of Hale's neck rise. He whispered, "Everyone ready?" Rourke nodded, gripping his machete. Nox checked her medkit. Chen adjusted her drone controls. Voss's hand rested on the small pulse rifle slung at his side. Not their primary weapon, but their last resort. The jungle made its move. It started with the ground. Roots shifted beneath the soil, curling toward the camp. The motion detectors lit up in silent alarm, no sound, just a blinking red light. "Here we go," Chen murmured. The first root breached the surface like a snake, lunging for the water filters. Hale's machete flashed, cutting it clean in one swing. A second root coiled toward Nox, but she stepped aside calmly, letting it strike the empty ground before Rourke severed it. Then came the sound, low, rhythmic thuds, growing louder. Shapes moved between the trees. At first they looked like shadows, but as they drew closer, the humans saw their form. They were tall, thin creatures, their skin blending with the foliage. Long arms dragged on the ground, fingers tipped with hooked claws, no eyes, no mouth, only smooth, bark-like faces. They moved with slow, deliberate steps, like predators certain their prey had nowhere to run. From orbit, alien observers whispered nervously. They had seen these things before, on the recordings from the last expeditions. None of the other species had survived contact. The creatures surrounded the camp in silence. One tilted its head, listening. Then, as if obeying. Morning on Varela X was not gentle. The light didn't so much rise as bleed slowly into the thick green, turning shadows from black to deep moss. Mist clung to the air, curling around trunks and vines. The jungle was never truly quiet, but at dawn it was watchful, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Waiting for something, Mason Hale's team moved early. They had survived the first night, but there was no sense in staying still. The jungle had tested them. It wouldn't make the same mistake twice. "Which way?" Nox asked, her voice low. Hale pointed toward the east, where the canopy dipped slightly. "Lower ground. Might lead us toward the mineral site." Chen checked her scanner, reading faint mineral traces to clicks ahead. No movement yet. The yet hung in the air like a warning. They moved single file through the dense undergrowth. Rourke led, his machete slicing through broad leaves, dripping with dew. Every step was measured. Humans knew better than to crash through a predator's territory like frightened prey. The ground was uneven, sometimes soft enough that a boot would sink ankle deep. Hale noticed tracks, not from the creatures they'd fought last night, but from something heavier, wider. The prints had a strange symmetry, like they belonged to something with too many legs. He said nothing yet. By midday, the heat was punishing. Sweat rolled down their faces. Even with rebreathers, the thick air made every breath a slow effort. The jungle's scent shifted constantly, sometimes earthy and sweet, sometimes sharp and metallic. It kept them on edge, never letting them settle. They stopped briefly at a fallen log to drink filtered water. That's when Chun's drone feed flickered. "Interference," she muttered, tapping the controls. "Something's blocking the signal." "Natural?" Voss asked. She shook her head. "No. This is targeted. Someone, or something, doesn't want us mapping this area." Rourke scanned the trees. "We've got company." It began subtly. Leaves fell without wind. Vines swayed, curling slightly in their direction. Then came the sound, a slow scraping drag across the forest floor. Something was circling them, just beyond sight. "Stay close," Hale ordered. A shape moved in the mist, large, low to the ground, with a segmented body that shimmered faintly. Then another, behind it. The creatures moved like giant centipedes, each segment rippling with hard chitinous plates. Dozens of legs gripped the earth. Their heads were blunt and armored, with a small cluster of black eyes. Nox whispered, "I thought the jungle was plants." Hale kept his eyes on them. "It's everything." The centipede things didn't rush. They crept, matching the human's pace. When one shifted closer, Rourke raised his machete, but Hale stopped him with a sharp gesture. "They're testing distance. Hold position." Minutes stretched. The jungle hummed with tension. Then, as if deciding the moment was right, the creatures attacked from both sides. Hale's team didn't scatter. They moved as one, shifting into a defensive circle. Chen released a small drone that hovered above them, projecting bursts of high-frequency sound. The nearest centipede shrieked, a dry, crackling noise, and reeled back, but the others pushed forward. Voss threw a flash charge into the undergrowth. Light burst, and the centipedes froze for half a second. That was enough for Rourke and Hale to strike. Machetes bit into the gaps between armored plates, forcing the creatures to retreat, but the jungle wasn't finished. From above, a massive vine dropped, snapping toward Nox like a whip. She rolled aside just in time, the vine slamming into the earth hard enough to split the soil. "They're hurting us," Chen shouted. Holly saw it now, the centipedes pushing from the flanks, the vines from above, the shifting ground ahead. They weren't trying to kill them outright. They were steering them toward something. "Back to the ridge," he ordered. They fought their way backward, step by step. The centipedes followed, relentless but not reckless. The vine struck again, grazing Rourke's shoulder and tearing his sleeve. The skin beneath blistered instantly. "Poison," Nox warned, pulling him back and injecting an antitoxin from her kit. They reached the ridge, panting, and found the creatures had stopped. They lingered at the edge of the slope, not crossing it. Chen checked her scanner. "There's something down there in the valley. Big energy reading." Hale stared into the mist-filled gap below. "That's where they want us." "Why?" Nox asked. His jaw tightened. To finish what they started with the others, they decided to stay put for a short rest. Rourke's wound was stable, but his arm throbbed, and the poison would slow him. Chen worked on repairing her drones, while Voss set up motion detectors in a wider arc. Hale walked a short distance to the ridge's edge, looking down into the green abyss. The valley floor shifted slightly, as if the plants there were breathing. He thought of the Kryn team's last words, "The roots hunt," and wondered if the heart of the jungle was waiting for them below. Behind him, Nox approached quietly. "We can't keep this pace for long." "I know," Hale said, "but stopping here is worse." She looked into the mist. "What do you think is down there?" Hale's answer was simple. The reason no one ever came back. Far above, in the safety of the observation deck on the Veltron flagship, alien commanders debated what they were seeing. Some believed the humans were reckless, doomed to the same fate as the others. But a few, very few, watched with interest. "They adapt," one insectoid tactician murmured. "They read the land like they've lived here before. They're prey," the Veltron ambassador said coldly. "The jungle always wins." But even he noticed something he didn't like. The humans never looked afraid. Tired, yes. Wary, yes, but not afraid. And that, in his experience, was dangerous. As dusk began to fall, Hale gathered the team. The jungle around them had gone unnervingly quiet again. "Tonight," he said, "we push into the valley." Rourke glanced at his wounded arm. "Into their trap." Hale's eyes narrowed. "Better to walk into it on our terms than wait for them to drag us there." The others nodded. No arguments. That was the thing about Terrans. When they committed completely. Somewhere in the distance, a low, deep sound rumbled through the ground, like a giant heartbeat. Hunt had begun. The ridge fell away into a deep green abyss. Mist clung to the air, curling around towering trees, whose roots spiraled down like massive ropes. From the top, it was impossible to see the valley floor, only shifting shadows and the faint glimmer of strange pale lights beneath the canopy. Hale studied the descent carefully. The vines looked thick enough to climb, but on Virella Ix, nothing could be trusted. Even the air felt heavier here, like they were standing on the threshold of something ancient and awake. "We go down in pairs," Hale said. "Slow. No one touches anything unless they have to." Chen clipped her harness to a vine and tested it with a hard pull. "Feels solid?" Rourke snorted. "So did that root that tried to eat me." They began the descent. The jungle swallowed them almost immediately, the ridge above fading from sight. Sounds changed as they went lower. High-pitched insect chatter gave way too deep. Resonant creaks and groans, like the trees were talking to each other. Halfway down, Nox froze. "Something's moving," she whispered. They all stopped. Far below, the mist shifted unnaturally, as if something huge had just slid through it. Then the movement was gone. "Keep going," Hale said, but his voice was tighter now. When they reached the valley floor, the air was thicker still. The ground was soft and springy, covered in a carpet of moss that seemed to pulse faintly under their boots. In every direction, the trees leaned inward, their branches interwoven high above, shutting out nearly all light. Voss crouched, touching the moss. "This stuff's warm. Don't touch it too long," Hale warned. Chen checked her scanner. "We're close. The minerals reading is off the charts, which means whatever's protecting it will be close too," Rourke muttered. They moved slowly, marking their path with thin strips of reflective tape. The pale lights they'd seen from above were here, strange, glowing orbs embedded in the tree trunks. They pulsed gently, almost like breathing. Nox leaned closer to one. "It's organic," she said. "Feels like it's part of the tree." "Step away from it," Hale ordered. They pressed deeper into the valley, and that's when the ground shifted beneath them. Not a tremor, more like the earth itself exhaled. The moss rippled outward in a slow wave. Chen's scanner blared an alert. Movement. Massive movement. The first sign came from above. Vines, thicker than a man's torso, dropping silently from the canopy. They hit the ground with a heavy thud, coiling toward the humans. At the same time, roots as wide as small logs burst through the moss, surrounding them in a loose circle. "It's closing us in," Voss shouted. "Cut a path." Hale barked. Machetes flashed, slicing through the nearest vines. The air filled with the sharp scent of sap, sweet and cloying. The vines recoiled, but did not retreat. More dropped from above, swaying like predators, waiting for the right moment to strike. Then the trees began to move. At first it was subtle, a shift in the way their trunks leaned. But within seconds, the entire grove was rotating inward, branches twisting, roots pulling free from the soil. It was as if the forest itself was folding in on them. Nox's voice was tight. "Trees aren't supposed to move like that. They're not trees," Hale said. "Not exactly." Chen's scanner pinged again. Single life form reading. Enormous. Under us. The ground pulsed harder. The moss bulged, splitting open as something rose from below. A massive root structure emerged. But it wasn't just wood, it was part. The clearing felt like the center of a trap. The crystal spire of Exionite rose from the ground like a jagged fang, its green glow reflecting in the damp eyes of Mason Hale's team. Around them, the jungle closed in, roots thick as tree trunks, vines swaying like snakes, the ground pulsing with slow, steady life. It wasn't just surrounding them. It was watching. Hale knew they had only minutes before the forest mind struck. Every movement of the roots was calculated. Every vine sway was precise. The jungle had killed hundreds before. It was patient because it had never lost. "Suggestions?" Rourke asked, scanning the shifting wall of vegetation. "We can't fight it head-on," Nox said. "We'd be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Voss crouched near the Ixionite, running a quick scan. "We can't carry much without being slowed down. And if we slow down, we're dead," Chen finished. Hale didn't answer right away. He crouched, pressing his palm to the damp moss. It was warm, almost feverish, and it seemed to pulse in time with the movement of the vines. This wasn't random. This was the heartbeat of the thing that was trying to kill them. Above the clearing, the alien observers watched from their orbiting ships. The Veltron ambassador crossed his scaled arms. They are surrounded. They will not last 5 minutes. One insectoid tactician tilted its head. Perhaps, but they still haven't panicked. That is unusual. Hale's mind worked fast. If this jungle was one connected organism, then it had to process information somehow, sense movement, store patterns, send signals. And if it could be tricked into thinking they were somewhere else, or that they were more dangerous than they appeared, he stood and turned to his team. We can't outmuscle it, but we can confuse it. Chen caught on first. You want to blind it? Exactly. Everything here reacts to touch, sound, pressure changes. We overload its senses, make it think it's under attack from multiple directions, and then we move. Voss's eyes lit up. The drones. Chen nodded. And the flash charges. And she patted her pack. Those lovely little sonic emitters. Hale looked at each of them in turn. If this works, we get to the ridge. If it doesn't, we'll make it work, Rourke interrupted. Just say when. They moved quickly. Chen released 2 mapping drones, programming them to dart in opposite directions and mimic human movement with heat signatures. Voss wired the sonic emitters to trigger at different intervals, placing them at the edges of the clearing. Knox and Rourke planted flash charges high on the crystal's outcroppings, their metallic casings glinting in the green light. The jungle shifted as they worked. The vines dipped lower, roots inching forward, testing the ground. The forest mind was sensing change, but it didn't yet understand. Almost ready, Chen whispered. Then the ground trembled harder, like a drum beat, growing louder. A massive rout, wider than any they'd seen yet, tore through the moss and slammed into the clearing. It coiled upward, towering above them like a serpent, preparing to strike. Now, Hale shouted. The plan exploded into motion. The drones took off, weaving between trees, their heat signatures flaring bright on the jungle's senses. The sonic emitters screamed in high-pitched bursts, bouncing off the trunks and making the air vibrate. Flash charges detonated in blinding white light, cutting sharp shadows across the moss. The forest mind reacted instantly. Roots surged toward phantom targets. Vines lashed at empty space. The clearing shook as massive limbs tore through their own ground in confusion. Move, Hale ordered. They bolted toward the narrowest gap in the wall of roots. Rourke led, his machete cutting through anything that moved too close. Knox stayed in the middle, keeping an eye on Rourke's wounded arm. Voss brought up the rear, tossing smoke charges to mask their retreat. A vine whipped out, catching Hale's leg and yanking him off his feet. He hit the moss hard, the air blasting from his lungs. The vine tightened, pulling him toward the main root structure. Cap, Chen yelled, spinning and firing a pulse round into the vine. It loosened just enough for Hale to slice through it. With his machete, he scrambled to his feet, breath ragged. They didn't slow, the jungle roared. It wasn't sound exactly, but a deep vibration that traveled through the ground and into their bones. Trees twisted violently. Roots slammed down like hammers. The forest mind had realized the trick. We're almost there, Voss shouted. The ridge came into view through the mist, steep, slick with moss, but climbable. Hale's team scrambled upward, hands gripping roots and branches. Behind them, the clearing convulsed as the forest mind tore into itself, ripping apart trees in its frenzy. Halfway up, Chen glanced back. It's following. Hale didn't look. Let it. The higher we go, the less ground it can use. When they finally reached the top, they collapsed on the ridge, lungs burning. From here, they could see the valley clearly. The jungle below writhed like a wounded animal, the pale lights in its trunks flashing erratically. The Ixionite crystal still stood, untouched, in the center bait for the next victims. Nox wiped sweat from her face. We can't take it with us. Not yet. Hale stared at the glowing mineral. No, but now we know where it is, and we know how to get past the first layer. Chen grinned faintly, and we know it can be hurt. The jungle below seemed to shiver, as if it had hurt her. Far above, the alien observers were silent. The Veltron ambassador finally spoke, his voice low. They escaped. The insectoid tactician clicked its mandibles. No, they learned. That is worse. Hale stood, looking down into the valley. The forest mind had underestimated them once. It wouldn't do so again. But neither would they. Next time, he said quietly. We don't run *. The Raven's wing drifted in high orbit above the planet. Its metal hull gleamed faintly in the pale light of the nearby star. But inside, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Captain Mason Hale stood at the central holodable, the projected image of the jungle world, swirling in green and red light before him. His team was gathered close. Rourke, Nox, Chen, and Voss, each looking tired, but unwilling to step away. They had escaped once. Now they were going back. You're serious? Rourke's voice was low, almost disbelieving. We barely made it out alive last time, Cap. And now you want to go back? Yes, Holly said simply. We have the coordinates for the Ixionite deposit. We know the forest mind's behavior patterns, and now we have something it hasn't seen before. Chen folded her arms. You mean the arc flares? Nox's eyebrows rose. Those are banned for planetary use. Exactly, Hale replied. The Alliance doesn't want irreversible ecosystem damage on a living world. But this isn't just a living world. It's a predator that's killed hundreds, and it will keep killing unless someone stops it. Across the table, Voss ran a finger over the glowing ridgeline in the projection. If we use the arc flares, we can't stay for long. The jungle will adapt. We'll get maybe 20 minutes of clear ground before it regrows. Hale nodded. 20 minutes is all we need. The door to the briefing room hissed open, and a tall, elegant figure stepped inside. Ambassador Selleck of the Veltron, scaled gold-eyed, and wearing the flowing robes of his station, regarded them with an unreadable expression. You humans never stop surprising me, Selleck said, his voice deep and slow. When we sent you down there the first time, we assumed you would either die quickly or retreat permanently. You chose neither. That's not how we do things, Rourke muttered. Selleck ignored him, stepping closer to the holodable. Many in the Alliance Council are unsettled. You have shown the forest mind can be evaded. If you now destroy a portion of it, the balance of power will change. Entire mineral markets could shift. Hale met his gaze. If the Council is worried about profit, they can keep worrying. I'm worried about lives. For a long moment, Selleck simply studied him. Then he inclined his head. Very well, I will not stop you. But I will not help you either. That's fine, Haley said. We weren't counting on help. The preparations began immediately. The arc flares, long cylinders of dense alloy, with unstable plasma cores, were loaded into drop packs. Chen recalibrated the sonic emitters to a higher frequency, one that would irritate the jungle's sensory network without fully alerting it until it was too late. Nox stripped down the team's gear for speed. Every ounce counted. Through it, all Hale kept moving, talking to each member of the team, making sure they were focused. But inside, the tension was coiling tighter. He knew this mission was more dangerous than the first. This time, they weren't trying to escape. They were trying to win. 12 hours later, the Raven's wing descended through the thick atmosphere, its heat shield glowing red against the friction. Clouds rolled past like smoke. When they broke through, the jungle stretched out below in endless shades of green, beautiful, deadly, alive. This is it, Haley said over the comm. Same drop point as before. We move fast, we move quiet. The shuttle landed on a narrow ridge. Steam hissed from its vents as the hatch opened, spilling warm, damp air inside. The team stepped out, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. The jungle seemed calm. Too calm. They moved down the ridge in single file. Chen deployed 2 drones, each scanning ahead with heat and motion sensors. The forest floor was thick with moss, muffling their steps. Above, vines swayed slowly in a wind that wasn't there. Feels like it's waiting for us, Knox whispered. It is, Hale replied. But it doesn't know why we're here yet. The Ixionite clearing came into view faster than before. The green crystal still pulsed faintly in the center, like a heartbeat. The raven's wing climbed steadily through the thick atmosphere of Varela Ixis, leaving behind a valley scarred by fire and plasma. Hale's team leaned against the shuttle walls, breathing hard, their clothes damp with sweat and ash. For a moment, the forest seemed defeated, but Varela Ix was never quiet for long. Below them, the jungle shifted unnaturally. Blackened roots and scorched vines writhed, as if trying to pull themselves together. The forest mind had adapted instantly, its tendrils probing for weak points, searching for the humans it had already marked as intruders. Chen checked the monitors, her brow furrowed. It's reorganizing, faster than we expected. It's intelligent, calculating our path, maybe even predicting the shuttle's trajectory. Hale's jaw tightened. Good, let it try. Inside the shuttle, the team reviewed the data collected from the valley. Ixionite samples glowed faintly in their containment units. It was enough to prove that humans could survive where others had perished. But they also knew the forest mind had been learning from them every step of the way. Rourke muttered, so it's going to follow us. Somehow. Yes, Hale said, and probably faster than we think. That's why we can't slow down. We keep moving, keep unpredictable. Knox frowned. This isn't just a jungle anymore. It's war. Hale shook his head. It's survival, and we're not going to lose. Back on the valley floor, the jungle began a retaliation the alien observers had not predicted. Vines surged skyward, breaking the thin shell of clouds above. The roots that had been burned by the flares split into thousands of smaller segments, each moving independently, each one faster than before. Trees snapped into new positions, creating walls and tunnels. In seconds, from orbit, Selleck hissed through his cum. Impossible. It's reorganizing in real time. No species should have that level of environmental adaptation. Chen smirked. Maybe we're the first to test it and survive. The shuttle descended toward a nearby extraction point, a narrow canyon that promised cover. But the jungle was waiting. Roots lashed across the rocks, vines swung down from the cliffs, and the moss itself seemed to crawl, trying to cling to the landing gear. Voss took control of the side guns, firing pulse rounds at any moving target. Sparks flew as vines and roots were cut away. Rourke worked alongside him, his machete flashing in tandem with the gunfire. Keep it steady, Hale shouted over the roar. We've got maybe 30 seconds before it adapts. Knox held the containment unit close. If we fall now, all of this is for nothing. A massive root slammed into the canyon wall, dislodging rocks that tumbled toward the shuttle. Hale twisted the controls, dodging debris. Chen's drones flew outside, emitting high-frequency pulses, creating an invisible shield that confused the root tendrils. It worked. Barely. The shuttle reached the canyon's mouth. The team erupted with relieved gasps, but Hale wasn't satisfied. The jungle mind wasn't done. It could rebuild, remap, and attack again anywhere they went. We need a plan, Hale said, voice calm but firm, and we need to make it something it can't predict. They landed on a rocky plateau, several clicks from the jungle's edge. Hale ordered the team to stay low, using drones, motion detectors, and portable scanners. They began to observe the forest from a safe distance. What are we looking for? Knox asked. Hal pointed to the twisted vines and moving roots. Patterns, rhythm, it's adapting, yes, but nothing adapts perfectly. Everything leaves a signature, a flaw. We find that, we survive. Chen nodded, and then we hit it where it hurts. Voss smiled grimly. I like that. As they observed, they noticed something remarkable. The forest mind responded most aggressively to heat, movement, and sudden flashes of light, all the tactics they had used before. But subtle, quiet movement drew almost no reaction. Hale realized the truth. It's predictable because it thinks in patterns. But humans don't always follow patterns. Rourke raised an eyebrow. You mean, sneak around it? Hale shook his head. Not just sneak, outsmart. Use its intelligence against it. Make it react to shadows while we strike somewhere else. Knox whispered, like a chess game. Exactly, Hale said. And humans are better at chess than anything this jungle has ever faced. That night, under a sky dotted with distant stars, Hale's team executed their plan. Small flares lit the forest's edge, drawing roots and vines in one direction. Drones moved independently, mimicking human heat signatures. And then the real team moved quietly, slipping through gaps, using every ounce of patience and cunning. Every step required focus. Every sound had to be calculated, and every heartbeat counted. By dawn, the team had reached the heart of the valley again, but this time not as prey. They had learned the rhythm of the predator, anticipated its reactions, and outsmarted its intelligence at every turn. The alien observers were stunned. Selleck's voice trembled with something that sounded like fear. I did not believe they could think like this, not even with our data. The forest mind pulsed beneath the canopy, confused and frustrated. For the first time, it had encountered something it could not immediately control, and the humans. They were already planning their next move. Hale stood with his team on the rocky plateau, looking down at the twisted, angry forest. He clenched his fists. We're not done yet, he said. But tonight we proved something. Chen smiled, exhaustion and pride mixed in her expression. That humans aren't just strong or fast, we're clever. Knox nodded. We adapt, we survive, and we fight. Rourke grinned. And apparently, we make very angry jungles look foolish. Hale looked out at the valley, his eyes burning with determination. Tomorrow, we finish what we started. And this time, we'll make sure the jungle knows the Terrans don't lose. The night was alive with sound, even from the plateau. The jungle below pulsed like a single, angry organism. Roots writhed across the valley floor. Vines swayed, brushing against one another, producing a faint, metallic hiss. The Ixionite crystal glimmered faintly at the heart of it all. Still untouched, still dangerous. Mason Hale crouched with his team behind a jagged rock outcrop. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with the ash of the scorched corridor they had created days before. Every muscle in his body was tense. Tonight, they weren't just surviving. They were going to strike. We've studied it. We know its pattern. But this is still the riskiest move yet, Hale said. His voice was calm, but the weight of command pressed on him like a physical force. Chen adjusted her wrist console, eyes flicking over drone telemetry. I've mapped every major route and branch movement. The moment we create a false hotspot, it'll react exactly how we predict. If we miscalculate, it's over. Rourke flexed his fingers around his machete. We've miscalculated before. And yet, here we are. Knox gave a tight smile. This isn't luck. It's us, humans. The plan was simple in theory: bait, confuse, and strike. The drones would mimic human heat signatures at multiple points, each carrying tiny sonic emitters to irritate the forest mind's sensory network. Meanwhile, Hale's team would move silently to the base of the Ixionite crystal, using the jungle's own roots as camouflage, exploiting the predator's overconfidence in its patterns. Hale exhaled. Remember, fast, precise, quiet, no heroics, just execution. The first phase began. Small flares burst in the distant trees, producing heat and bright light. Vines immediately reacted, lashing toward the points of energy, roots surging upward. In anticipation, the forest mind followed the illusion, leaving the central clearing momentarily exposed. Move, Hale commanded. They slipped down the slope, each step careful, measured. Moss clung to their boots. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and scorched plant matter. The Exionite crystal shimmered ahead, its jagged surface pulsing with a soft, almost hypnotic light. It was the prize and the trigger for the forest mind's final reaction. As they approached, the forest mind seemed to hesitate. Something was different. Hale noticed subtle pauses in root movements, slight shifts in vine patterns. The predator was trying to predict them, but humans did not move like patterns. We're inside its calculations now, Hale whispered to Nox. Calculations don't work on chaos, she said, and gave him a faint, determined smile. Chen's drones circled above, sending high-frequency pulses. Vines whipped toward them in a frenzy, smashing trees and tearing into the moss floor. The forest mind had realized the ruse, and it was angry. Roots twisted, slamming into the clearing. Trying to block the humans' advance, Hale dodged a massive limb, slicing a smaller root with his machete. Almost there, he shouted. Rourke grabbed Nox's arm as a vine lunged sideways, the tip scraping the rock beneath them. Sparks flew. Voss fired pulse rounds at the thickest roots, cutting them just long enough to clear the path. The Exionite crystal was within reach. Hale placed the final small energy disruptor at the base of the crystal. Now, he said. Chen triggered the sequence. A high-pitched resonance radiated from the device, pulsing in precise frequency patterns. The crystal shivered. Vines writhed violently. Roots slammed the ground as if the forest mind was in agony. For the first time, the jungle's unity fractured. The Exionite crystal absorbed the resonance, sending waves of energy through the roots. The forest mind screamed, not in sound, but in a tremor that shook the valley floor. Vines pulled back, roots recoiled, and the jungle's motion became erratic. Hale's team didn't hesitate. They sprinted toward the exit corridor they had cleared, the forest mind lashing wildly behind them. The forest mind pulsed beneath the valley like a heartbeat gone wild. Hale's team crouched on the plateau, watching the jungle with wary eyes. They had survived before, but the predator was learning faster than ever. It had adapted to the arc. Flares, the drones, even their patterns of movement. This is it, Hale said quietly. We either end this now, or it ends us. Chen scanned the valley below. It's analyzing everything we did. Every movement, every sound, every flare. It's anticipating us. Nox swallowed hard. So we're walking into a trap. No, Hale said, voice steady. We're walking into the only way forward. Because traps are predictable, and humans. We're unpredictable. The team prepared for descent. Unlike before, this time they carried small, synchronized pulse devices. Not enough to destroy the Exionite entirely, but enough to send shocks through the forest mind's network. Rourke tightened his gloves. So basically, we're hitting it where it hurts, and hoping it doesn't eat us first. Exactly, Hale said. But here's the twist. We're not just attacking it. We're making it think it's attacking us. Chen nodded. Redirect its intelligence against itself. It adapts to patterns. So we'll give it false patterns. Chaos. Voss tightened the straps on his pack. Sounds insane, but I like insane. They descended into the valley in silence, using shadows, rocks, and their own bodies to move unseen. Every step was measured, every breath calculated. The jungle responded instantly. Roots shifted, vines lashed, moss pulsed. But the humans were not alone. Above, the drones flitted like ghostly sparks, echoing their movement, feeding false heat, and motion signals to confuse the predator. Hale led them toward the Ixionite crystal, which glowed faintly in the dim light. This was the core, the heart of the forest mind's intelligence. If they could disrupt it here, they could cripple the jungle entirely. Suddenly, the forest mind struck. A massive root, thick as a tower, crashed down from above, splitting the ground beside Nox. She barely rolled out of the way, her pulse racing. Voss fired, cutting the tendril, but dozens more erupted around them. Hale shouted, "Keep moving, don't stop." Chen activated the pulse devices in sequence. Waves of energy raced across the moss and roots. The jungle screamed, a deep, resonant vibration that rattled their bones. Vines twitched and snapped, roots recoiled, and the forest mind paused, confused. It had never encountered humans that moved without predictable patterns. Hale smiled grimly. Exactly what I was counting on. They reached the crystal. Hale placed the final device at its base. It was small, almost insignificant to any observer, but in the hands of humans, it was genius. The device pulsed, sending chaotic energy through the crystal network. Every root, every vine, every connection screamed as it tried to adapt simultaneously. The forest mind panicked. Below, the alien observers watched in stunned silence. Selic-scaled hands were pressed against the viewport. They are not using force. They are using thought, cleverness. Another alien whispered, "No other species could have done this. The Terrans, they are rewriting the rules." The jungle erupted in a final furious surge. Massive roots tried to crush the humans, vines whipped like living whips, and the moss floor heaved violently. Hale and his team ducked, dodged, and leaped with instinct honed over days of fighting. But it wasn't strength that won them the battle. It was strategy. The forest mind's own intelligence was turned against it, each root fighting against another, each vine misreading signals from the humans. The jungle fractured from the inside. Then, in a single moment, the pulse devices reached their climax. The Ixionite crystal flared with chaotic energy. Roots froze mid-motion, vines quivered and collapsed, and the jungle's pulse slowed. The valley grew eerily silent, save for the faint rustle of leaves. Hale looked around at his team, exhausted, dirty, but alive. Chen let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Nox smiled, tears streaking her dirt-smeared face. Voss clapped Rourke on the shoulder. "We did it," Hale said simply. But inside, he knew it was more than survival. This was a victory of the mind, the human mind, against impossible odds. The forest mind wasn't gone. It had retreated, humbled and confused, but it had learned, and so had the galaxy. From orbit, the alien observers communicated quietly. Every council in the Alliance would hear of this. Every species would know. Humans were not just strong, fast, or brave. They were unpredictable, clever, fearless, and united. Hale looked down at the valley one last time. The jungle was still alive, but it would never underestimate humans again. He knew this victory was just the beginning, but it would echo through the stars. Chen spoke softly. "We survived what no one else could." "Not just survived," Nox added. "We outsmarted it." Hale nodded. "Yes, that's what humans do. We adapt, we endure, and when the odds are against us, we find a way." The team climbed back to the ridge, gazing at the horizon. The first rays of the alien sun broke over the mountains, reflecting off distant clouds. It was beautiful, fierce, and full of possibility. Rourke laughed quietly. "So, next time, we go for the jungle on steroids." Hale shook his head, smiling. "No, next time, we just remind the galaxy what humans are capable of. That's enough." Voss stared at the valley below. "They'll remember us." "Yes," Hale said, his voice steady, resolute. "They will. Because this time, humanity didn't just survive. Humanity conquered fear itself." And as the sun rose higher, casting light across the scarred valley, Hale whispered, almost to himself, "Let them all see. The Terrans are unstoppable.